Hello and welcome to this episode of Baughcuts. In this episode, we're going to continue our 10-minute quick focus on the poems from the AQA Power and Conflict Poetry Anthology. Today we're looking at the Prelude by William Wordsworth, and the structure of these episodes is always the same. We look at the title, and then we move on to three key quotations from across the poem. So we're starting with the title, and the title, The Prelude, really encapsulates Wordsworth's original intention for the poem. And remember, we're only reading a short section of a much longer poem, but the prelude really was designed to serve as an introduction to a larger, and at the time of Wordsworth's death, an unfinished work titled The Recluse. So it's important to understand, therefore, that the prelude is, as a title, signifying a preliminary or a preparatory piece. It's setting the stage for something later, more substantial to come. So in this context, the poem was designed to function as almost like a prologue to The Recluse, which was never published. But the idea behind the prelude then is to, if we think about its full title, The Prelude, Growth of a Poet's Mind, it really emphasizes his development, his introspective journey, his evolution of I suppose, Wordsworth's poetic consciousness. And so the sense we get in this moment, this shorter extract or excerpt from the prelude, this moment of shifting from a childhood innocence to a more adult form of experience, the prelude kind of conveys that too. It reflects, therefore, its title, the poem's original purpose as an introductory work, but also this idea that it deeply explores personal and poetic maturing, the idea of his development as a human being, his development from childhood to adult experience, and of course, his development as a poet. Now we're going to move on to three key quotations from the poem itself. We're going to start with the first one, which is, "It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure." So this quotation comes from the moment the speaker, which I think we can safely assume is a young Wordsworth, where he takes a boat that isn't his, what we might see as a sort of informal borrowing, but borrowing in inverted commas. An act of stealth suggests he did it secretly, and that conveys a sense that he knows perhaps it's wrong. He's trespassing or engaging in theft. Yet he experiences troubled pleasure, which is a beautifully paradoxical phrase. The pleasure comes from the thrilling freedom of rowing on the lake at night, the sensuous joy, we might say, of being in nature. The trouble part, though, hints at a moral unease, or maybe even a premonition of something unpleasant to come. So troubled pleasure, this oxymoron, captures a mix of excitement and guilt that the boy, the speaker as a boy, feels. Initially, the night ride is enjoyable, but even at the start of the poem, there's a sense of hesitation or foreshadowing that this late night boat adventure will not remain simply pleasurable. It's a quote that sets up a key theme, the interplay of man and nature and the emotional complexity that can evoke. The stolen boat ride symbolizes a youthful indiscretion, but also a desire to be one with nature. We've got that word stealth, indicating that nature is not just a benign, welcoming playground. There are boundaries that the boy is crossing. Troubled pleasure also reflects that theme of guilt and also the sublime. Often, encounters with the sublime, that is the overwhelming beauty, but also the terror that nature can evoke, carries a mix of attraction and fear. The line's brevity, how short it is, and its balance, stealth versus pleasure, emphasizes a turning point. It foreshadows that the initially sweet and illicit joy will lead to a lesson and a profound experience for the young Wordsworth. In the larger context of the poem, this moment precedes the appearance, of course, of the great mountain, the crag. The trouble in the pleasure grows significantly. Thus, this quote encapsulates both innocence and transgression inherent in the boy's action, as well as that mood of uneasy anticipation. It's maybe then the quiet before the storm of emotion that this vast mountain is going to provoke. Ultimately, in this key line, "It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure," Wordsworth is illustrating how nature can give delight, but also unsettle the conscience, which contributes to the spiritual growth depicted in the poem and indeed alluded to in the poem's full title. Next quotation. "The horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct upreared its head." Now, this quote describes the dramatic moment the speaker notices the mountain peak appearing over him as he rose. And that phrasing, "a huge peak, black and huge," uses repetition to stress the sheer enormity and the darkness of the mountain. It leaves almost the speaker kind of speechless, reduced to reiterating huge because it maybe defies normal description. Its sudden appearance at the horizon's bound, that is, the furthest visible edge, makes it seem as if it's blocking the horizon entirely, as if it's an almost inescapable presence. The personification, "with voluntary power instinct upreared its head," gives the mountain agency and threatening intent. It is as if the peak has consciousness and will. It uprears its head like a living creature. One might imagine a giant maybe sort of emerging. This transforms the mountain from a passive part of the landscape into an active, menacing character. Those words, "voluntary power," suggest the mountain chooses to confront him, and instinct implies a natural, perhaps primal force. Upreared its head makes the peak sound more like a giant creature or a titan awakening. It's a moment filled with sublime awe and terror. The speaker is awe-struck and fearful. Thematically, this quote delves into nature's power and the smallness of man, the insignificance of humankind. The boy who moments ago felt a troubled pleasure now feels genuine alarm and humility as this black and huge presence looms. It indicates a shift from the familiar and the beautiful to the unknown and overwhelming in nature. Wordsworth then is really vividly illustrating the concept of the sublime. The mountain is majestic and terrifying, causing the speaker to feel that conflict of awe and fear. And this, subsequently, catalyzes a profound internal change. Immediately after, the boy turns his boat around in a panic. Poetically, the use of personification and that powerful, visual, almost tactile word, upreared, convey how he perceives the mountain as a mighty, almost living force. We've got darkness, the word black, adding to the sense of dread. This is a nighttime encounter, remember, lit by moonlight, and the mountain is a black silhouette of power. It's a quote central to the poem, as it marks a turning point from confident, maybe might say hubristic exploration to humbled retreat. It reinforces that core message that nature is not just gentle and picturesque and scenic, but also awe-inspiring and capable of invoking deep introspection by confronting us as human beings with our own transience and insignificance. Next quotation, final quotation of the three. "Huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men were a trouble to my dreams." Now, this quotation comes from the aftermath of the boat incident, when the speaker is reflecting on how the experience affected him. Having been confronted by the towering mountain, he's haunted by the memory. Huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men. This is a quotation that refers to the shapes of nature, mountains, and the scale and sense of presence in nature that he now knows possesses a grandeur and otherness beyond human scale. The phrase emphasizes that these forms, like the mountain, are not alive in the human sense. They operate on a different level of existence and time. They're mighty, they're powerful, they're huge, they're vast. They almost have a spirit or a life force, that voluntary power instinct from earlier, but not in a mortal human way. This realization has deeply unsettled the speaker. He says they were a trouble to my dreams. This means that after the encounter, whenever he slept, he seems plagued by nightmares and deep, unsettling thoughts. The word trouble as a noun here conveys something that disturbs peace. These forms moved slowly through his mind by day and into his dreams by night, indicating an all-encompassing impact. Thematically, this line addresses the lasting impression of the sublime encounter. It's about the power of nature to deeply affect the human psyche. The boy has lost his innocent confidence. The natural world's mystery and power has instilled a profound humility and maybe even a sort of existential anxiety in him. No longer does he think of nature in terms of pretty images. It's now enigmatic, in some sense unknowable and formidable. And that phrase, do not live like living men, also suggests a supernatural or spiritual element, as if these natural forms are beyond our mortal limited understanding, hinting at the divine, or at least the transcendent aspects of nature. In Wordsworth's context, this moment is critical in shaping his understanding that nature is the teacher of profound truths, often through discomfort. The tone then is reflective, it's somber. The use of ellipsis indicates omitted words, but it also gives that trailing off feel, as if ordinary language fails to capture the entirety of what those forms were. Trouble to my dreams shows how the event has moved from external adventure to internal conflict. He's wrestling with thoughts and maybe guilt for the theft and awe of the mountain internally. Think about that, the word trouble. Troubled pleasure now becomes trouble to my dreams. This line then effectively sums up the aftermath. The speaker's mind is transformed, his consciousness, his poetic consciousness is transformed. It underlines the poem's message about the formative power of nature. Experiences in the natural world, especially frightening or inspiring ones, become part of our very being and consciousness, altering how we perceive the world. In essence, then, it is a quotation that conveys an encounter with the huge peak, an encounter that left a permanent, unsettling imprint upon the speaker, upon Wordsworth himself, one that replaced easy childhood delight with profound adult experience and contemplation.